Marty, as it comes up as Henry passes today, you've been asked about that call so many times. Did you have any idea, three batters into your Reds Major League Baseball broadcasting career, what that moment was? How did you handle it?
Well, for one thing, Gary, you don't expect it to happen. I mean, I can reflect back to what Joe Nuxhall said after the first half inning began. He said, "What the hell do you do for an encore?" And I said, "I don't know. I have no idea." So the last thing in the world I expected was to see Aaron tie Ruth's record right there in the first at bat of the season. I didn't dwell on in the event that it did happen what I was going to say, because I've never done that. If I try, I'm not good enough to have done it and not to have it sound contrived. So, you hope that you don't fumble over your words and it flows easily and it conveys what's happening at the moment. Jack Billingham is one of my dear friends in my life. He and his wife, Jolene, are good friends with Amanda and mine. And he and I exist on a relationship of digging each other about everything under the sun. And I accuse him all the time of letting Henry know what pitch was coming when the count was 3-1. So he'd go down in the record book for something, because he sure as heck wasn't going to go down on anything that he achieved. And it was exciting. It was something that, came amidst a lot of controversy, because it was a question as to whether or not Aaron was going to be able to play. The Braves did not want him to play any of the three games. They wanted him to go home and on Monday night have a chance to tie the record and maybe break the record in front of the crowd at Fulton County Stadium. And Commissioner Boyd Kuhn stepped in and said, "That's not going to work. We have the integrity of this game to uphold." So they settled on him playing two games. He played, and I could be wrong, but I think he played the entire extra inning game on opening day, may have come out early, and then started another game, but came out early in that one. He sat one and then came out early in the other game. And, he tied the record at home, and they got what they wanted because, he broke the record at home before the Atlanta crowd.
How bad, you just talked about what happened there and how the commissioner wanted him to play and it to be pure. How bad did you want to have it at 7:15?
Yeah, I didn't even. To be honest with you, I was content with what happened. I would have loved to have seen him do exactly what he did, and that's go to Atlanta before a full house, break the record down there. Most of his home runs came. The majority of his home runs came in a Braves uniform. Ironically, he ended his career back in Milwaukee with the Brewers, but I was happy with that. I'm a romantic in some cases, and that one case is that if a guy's on the verge of breaking a record, I'd like to see him do it at home, whether it be baseball, basketball, football, whatever the case might be. And I was just thrilled to be able to call a historic home run, four batters into my own career at the big league level. And I was thankful for that.
Marty, how much of a thrill was it, having done minor league ball and, Henry was 40 by that point. He didn't hit a whole lot more home runs, although he hit 20 that year at 40 and hit one, in the very first day. But as a young broadcaster, you're getting in a game. I mean, of all the greats that you've covered, very first game you covered, here's Henry Aaron. Did you get a chance to go down on the field at all, or?
No, I did not. That entire series, our paths didn't even cross. It might have crossed. We might have crossed paths in spring training that year because the Braves played in West Palm Beach. They trained over there at that time, and we might have crossed paths then. I was at such an early stage that I was in awe of all these guys. The rub elbows with Bench and Rose and Morgan and Concepcion and Perez and people like that. And then to go to broadcast games involving other great players. I kind of treaded lightly. I did what most rookies should do, and that's for the most part, keep your mouth shut and listen to what people say until you got your feet wet. And I got to know him a little bit in the ensuing years. As you said, he was in the twilight of his career by then. I probably got to know him a bit better in the aftermath of his retirement because he was around a lot, for many years as a front office executive with the Braves. And we would cross paths, and I was always taken by the fact that he was a regular guy. I told someone earlier today, if you wanted to define the perfect professional athlete in every sense of the word, his ability to play, his ability to not have an ego that exploded on him around people outside the game, treated people with great respect, all the positives, you'd have a picture of Henry Aaron. He was the complete person on and off the field. And, you know, for my money, he's the all-time home run king. I'll take that to my grave. There was never any controversy connected with his life, whether as a player or off the field. There were never any allegations about him, any untoward allegations at all. He lived a great life. He had a wonderful marriage. He was just, for me, what every professional athlete should be about. And I think there are a lot of young kids that came up in the ensuing years after he retired, but were still connected with the club in the Braves organization, that learned an awful lot about how to conduct yourself and how to carry yourself as a celebrity, as a figure in the eyes of many, public figure who also happens to be one of the greatest at what he did for a living that ever was.
Wow, you can't say any better than that. And I had the same experience with him. But you also took one, and it's much bigger coming from you, a fellow Hall of Famer who called one of his, biggest home runs. But I agree with you. He is the all-time home run king to me. What do you think of there's a divided group on that, even in Cooperstown?
Oh, yeah. Well, quite honestly, I think that, the longer we go, the further away from the act, so to speak, that we get away from. That is performance-enhancing drugs in the whole 9 yards. One day, people like Roger Clemens and Barry Bonds and people like that will be in the Baseball Hall of Fame. I would only hope that when that day comes, that there will be an asterisk on that plaque, and there will be some short mention of what their career was involved in. Thank God that never happened to people like Ken Griffey Jr. It never happened to all the great players that came down the road in the Reds organization. And it didn't happen to Henry Aaron. And it's just something that is going to happen, because you're going to have a new generation of writers that only know what they read. They didn't live it like you and I did, and was around when all that stuff was going on, especially between Sosa and McGuire and so forth. It is what it is. I'm not going to worry about it. I know what I feel. I know when I say so-and-so is a true Hall of Famer, nobody can make that claim with more authenticity, more passion than anybody who uses that term to reflect upon the career that Henry Aaron had.
Yeah, I'm with you, Marty. I want to keep you too long, but having an advocate like you with your standing in the game, as we watch all these old films, and I was lucky enough to have seen Henry play, in the 60s at Wrigley Field. And, he was still, it wasn't his prime, but he was still a force. But when you watch these old films of him and see it, it was on the wrists, and he had that big bottom, and then, the middle that all
That's right.
came from his trunk. It just, when you think about him doing it all naturally and purely, I still, especially now, when we look back and we see these, the films of a guy doing it right. I'm with you.
Right.
I get upset thinking about, how easy they made it look, in that steroid era.
Well, the other thing is, Gary, I think when people hear the name Henry Aaron, they automatically think home run. If you subtract the total number of home runs he hit from his all-time hit total, he still had over 3,000 hits. I mean, this guy was not just a home run hitter. He was an outstanding hitter, period, end of story. And I would recommend to any young person who only knows about Henry Aaron from what they have heard from other people to go back and do a little research and read about his years growing up and as a very, very poor young man from a very poor family, and to do what he did It's a great story. That's not to say that you can't find the same story with other athletes. I know you can, but I just think because we're talking about the passing of a great human being this morning, it would behoove people who have a love for the game to read about his background and the things that he accomplished, because you walk away with one thing. You realize one thing, that he was not just a home run hitter. He was a whole lot more than that.
As he said, he came to the Braves with 2 sandwiches and $2. So that was an amazing. All those guys that came back, from down in Alabama, him and Banks and Billy Williams, and they a great connection.
The other thing. Go ahead.
No, that's fine. Go ahead.
The other thing is, you also have to put him in the position of being a very influential person as far as the black movement was concerned in Major League Baseball. Now, you had Jackie Robinson, who came in, 47, 46, 47, something like that, 48. And then Larry Doby was the first black man in the American League. Sam Jethro was an outfielder, not nearly the talent the other guys had that came up with the Milwaukee Braves. And then later on in the early 50s, Joe Black and Don Newcomb, both pitchers with the Brooklyn Dodgers. And then Aaron, here comes Aaron. And the game is still only a handful of black players playing at the big league level at that time. And not only was he one of them, but he also, I'm not going to say give anybody else a benefit of the doubt. Up to that point, there was not another great player of that ilk. Jackie Robinson was a great player. Jackie Robinson was no Henry Aaron. When you take the entire scheme of things, other than no question about Robinson having to fight a greater battle because he was the first black man at the big league level. So what Aaron accomplished, and he started right from the get-go. You couldn't fool around for 4 or 5 years and all of a sudden wake up one day and say, well, I'm going to start hitting home runs now. He started almost from the beginning. And so I don't think you can underline the importance of what he meant to a lot of black players that came along after him because of the kind of beginning that he sustained throughout his career as a big league ball player.
Yeah, and then of course, in the mid '60s, playing in Atlanta, which was a pretty big deal too for him.
Yeah, no question.
We talk a lot about 714. We're going to play the clip going into our sports segment today with your call. But what do you remember? You called his 20th that year. What do you remember about that last game of the year?
That's the first time I've heard that. I didn't know that. I did.
Yeah, it was like game 163 or something. I'm trying to figure out why they played an extra game, but it was the last game of the year, and he did homer. You don't remember it?
I'll be darned. I didn't. That's like I'll tell you another funny story. When my last season in 19, and I'm going into ballparks for the last time, and we were in Atlanta. The Reds were in Atlanta to play the Braves, and I had a guy come in the booth who had been around forever, and we were talking. He said, "Oh, by the way," I said, "What?" He said, "This is kind of a special night tonight." And I said, "Well, I mean, if you're talking about me being here and doing a game in it," he said, "No, I'm not talking about that." He said, 2 people in this ballpark tonight that were there the day that Aaron tied Babe Ruth's home run record. I said, "Really?" He said, "Yeah, you and Henry. That's it." And I was stunned. I was so taken aback by it because I knew Aaron was there that night. I didn't see him, but I knew he was in the ballpark, and it caused me to really reflect back, this being my last year, and then thinking back to day one of my career, and the fact that here we are fast forwarding 46 years later, and Henry and I are in the same ballpark in Atlanta. It was really a very, very interesting way for me to leave Atlanta, Georgia in that series.
Yeah, that's a great memory. Great story. I'm glad I sparked it with, and you're going to have to look up like I did in Baseball Reference and see if any of that comes back to you, that game, the last game of 74. One last thing, Marty, since we got you. We've seen this very strange offseason. We've seen, especially in the NL Central, a lot of teams unloading. We've seen only 2 or 3 teams, the Padres, the Yankees, Toronto, that are out there acquisitioning players. We don't know when spring training is going to start. the commissioner claims we're going to have a full season of full spring training, and now it's less than a month away. I don't see how that's possible, and only if everyone gets a vaccine. But without going into all that, the Reds have done a little bit here and there. I kind of like Roma. Well, actually, Roma might sign with the Cubs today. The Reds have been picked, which hasn't happened in maybe since, your prime, to win the Central Division. What do you think of their chances and what this season is going to look like?
I think if they don't make any more moves, moves such as trading Castillo or trading Sonny Gray or trading one of the guys that joined the club last year, Mike Moustakas, Castellanos, if they stand pat, and obviously we all know that they're right now trying to come up with somebody to play shortstop. And if they are able to accomplish that and stand pat and keep the people that they have right now, I'd pick them to win the Central Division too. I think with all the changes that have taken, this is a division to be in. If there's one division to be in, this is the one to be in if you're coming off or still involved in a pandemic that destroyed the game for one season last year and the billions of dollars that were lost because of all the things that went into it. I would pick them. I really would. I think if they can keep those two guys in that rotation, obviously they're going to miss Trevor Bauer, but I think they can probably make up 14 wins, which was over whatever his record was, over 60 games. So I like their chances. Now, if they start getting rid of people, that'd be a different deal, but they haven't done it yet. And I would hope that unless somebody comes along with a deal that will just completely blow them out of the water and they can't not do it, that is trading either Castillo or Gray, then they have every reason to believe that they can win the division in 2021.
That's great. Great stuff, Marty.